Theme 52: The Historical Evolution of the United States, from Abraham Lincoln to Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Index 1. Introduction 2. Relation with other themes 3. Current legislation 4. Historical background 5. The cotton industry and slavery 6. Secession and Civil War 7. The reconstruction of the South 8. The USA as a new world power 9. Immigration 10. Conclusion applicable to language teaching 11. Relevant bibliography 1. Introduction. The theme I have chosen to write about is number 52, which deals with the historical evolution of the United States from Abraham Lincoln to Franklin Delano Roosevelt. In the first place, I will provide some historical background to better understand this period. I will go on to explain how the cotton industry and slavery contributed to the outbreak of the American Civil War. I will then discuss the situation of the southern states after the war. Following this, I will discuss the key factors that have made the USA a world power up to these days, explaining how it dealt with immigration. To conclude, I will share some thoughts on how best to approach the teaching and learning of history and culture in our secondary school classes. 2. Relation with other themes. This theme is directly related to number 46, which deals with the history of the United States until the Secession War, and to themes 53 to 55, which deal with the most relevant American authors of this period. 3. Current legislation. The Modified Organic Law of Education, the LOMLOE, came into force in 2021 and has now been introduced in secondary education. The law deals comprehensively with the most suitable type of methodology to be implemented in our secondary school classes. The official curriculum of the Autonomous Community of Madrid contains detailed information about the introduction of points related to history and culture during the different stages of compulsory secondary education and bachillerato. All of this is established and supported by the Council of Europe in the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages. 4. Historical background. The United States history is relatively short compared to other countries, but it was not peaceful. The first settlers forced problems with Native Americans and among themselves. After improving their commerce and politics, they desired independence from Great Britain, leading to the American Revolution. The revolution led to a written constitution, religious tolerance, the Northern abolitionist movement, and faith in popular government. The U.S. faced another conflict with Britain in 1812 for commercial reasons, leading to a rise in nationalism. Slavery was a significant aspect of the southern states' economy, leading to the Civil War between the North and the South. 5. The cotton industry and slavery. Slavery dates back to ancient cultures, including Egypt, Greece, and Rome, and re-emerged after the discovery of America, where African slaves were used in the southern states for cotton, sugarcane, and tobacco production. Abolitionist ideas were spreading in the industrial North, but the economic policies and the question of slavery led to division between the North and the South. Expansion towards the West intensified conflicts. 6. Secession and Civil War. As mentioned before, an abolitionist movement emerged in the North, but not all Northerners supported it. Many believed that slavery would disappear gradually and that the southern states should solve the issue themselves. However, the reality was different as the differences between the two parts of the Union grew larger. Those in the South believed that slavery was necessary and profitable, and thus should be permanent. The abolitionist movement not only highlighted the cruelty of slavery, but also its violation of human rights. Many slaves escaped with the help of northern people to live a free life. The question of whether new territories should allow slavery caused real confrontation, and the publication of Uncle Tom's Cabin and the case of Dred Scott, who was a slave who was taken to a free state and lived there freely for 20 years, but once back in Missouri he was made a slave again, further fueled anti-slavery sentiment. The Whig Party disappeared and was replaced by the Republicans, who aimed to abolish slavery and defend individual rights. Abraham Lincoln became President of the Union in 1860 and faced the problems that led to the Civil War. 7 states formed the Confederate States of America and decided to separate from the Union. Lincoln did not recognize the secession and declared war on the South to preserve the Union. The North had advantages like a larger population and industry, and Lincoln proclaimed an embargo on the southern coast, which hurt the Southern's economy. In 1863, Lincoln proclaimed freedom for all slaves and urged them to join the Union. In 1865, the South surrendered to the North and the war ended. 7. The reconstruction of the South. After the Civil War, Lincoln sought to reintegrate Southern states back into the Union without punishment, but he was assassinated after his re-election. His successor, Andrew Johnson, also wanted to reconcile, but Congress disagreed, and he faced an impeachment attempt and was forced to resign. Troops were sent by Congress to control the South, and dictatorial policies were implemented until the 14th and 15th Amendments were ratified, granting rights to black people. Secret organizations, such as the Ku Klux Klan, appeared in the South to threaten black people, and the problem lasted until Northern troops retreated in 1877. Reconstruction then began, with railroad development, a rebirth of the cotton industry and its manufacture, and the exploitation of iron, steel, and coal with northern capital. From 1877, there has been an alternation in the presidency between the Republican and Democrat parties. 8. The USA as a new world power. After the Civil War, the U.S. expanded westward, with agriculture and cattle breeding being prominent industries. The North and Northeast saw the greatest development with the emergence of larger cities like New York, Chicago, and Philadelphia. Immigration from Europe contributed to a significant demographic growth. Production increased greatly in the early 900s, generating large surpluses for commerce. The first decade of the 1900s saw Republican dominance with Presidents William McKinley and Theodore Roosevelt, but was politically progressive and positive. A. War against Spain. In 1896, William McKinley became president and, after good relations with Cuba, he decided to intervene in the Cuban revolt against Spain. The war was short but decisive, and the Spanish government left Cuba in 1898, ceded Puerto Rico and Guam as compensation, and the Philippines were sold to the U.S. for $20 million. B. The USA between 1898 and the First World War. American imperialism began in 1898 during the war against Spain and continued throughout the 20th century due to economic factors, the desire to find new places, and to showcase their superiority. Theodore Roosevelt was a representative president who was actively involved in both international and domestic affairs, including intervening in Central America and the Caribbean following Monroe's Doctrine, tackling problems related to privileges and abuses, and fighting against environmental issues. In 1910, the Democrat Woodrow Wilson was elected and enacted reforming legislation on economic and social aspects, fought for women's voting rights, and participated in the creation of the League of Nations, cementing the USA's position as a world power. C. The USA between the First and Second World Wars. Wilson initially remained neutral during World War I, but was eventually forced to intervene after several incidents. The U.S. played an important role in ending the war, and the principles put forth by Wilson at the peace conference were widely accepted. However, Wilson faced opposition at home due to his lack of focus on social welfare, and the U.S. adopted a policy of isolationism after his presidency, with the slogan, "America First." Does it sound familiar? The crisis of 1929. Opinions differ as to the starting point of the economic crisis, with some believing it began in America due to surplus production and others attributing it to the war in Europe. Roosevelt believed the crisis resulted from mistaken economic policies. Overproduction, financial imbalance from the war, the breaking of the monetary system, and growing speculation were factors that contributed to the crisis in the 1920s. Many investments were lost, factories closed, and unemployment soared, leading to poverty, discontent, and crime. The stock market crash caused a worldwide economic crisis that went beyond financial troubles. The New Deal. Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal program aimed to rescue the U.S. from the Great Depression. It included economic and social reforms, such as reducing imports, withdrawing capital from Europe, limiting production, and aiding agriculture and industry. Environmental issues were also addressed. Despite his re-election in 1936, the crisis persisted, but in 1939 the U.S. began selling arms to some European countries. The U.S. entered World War II in 1941 after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor and Nazi Germany declared war. 9. Immigration. In the early 20th century, the US government passed immigration laws that became increasingly restrictive in the 1920s due to a growing sentiment against immigrants. The laws were selective, prohibiting those who might become social problems and trying to hinder the entrance of people from certain regions. By 1927, only 1,500,000 immigrants were allowed, and in 1929, immigration from Japan was forbidden. Meanwhile, small migration of discontented writers and intellectuals from the US to Europe was also taking place. 10. Conclusion applicable to language teaching. To conclude, it goes without saying that it is vital to deal with cultural and historical aspects in our classes, especially at this stage of our students' learning process and as laid down in the curriculum. We could easily make use of the content in this theme in our classes by presenting our students with written or audiovisual materials about this interesting historical period in the target language. Another idea would be to ask our students to do some research about this topic and present it to the class. 11. Relevant bibliography. The bibliography I have used for this theme has basically been A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn and Franklin D. Roosevelt and the New Deal by William Leuchtenberg. I hope you agree with me that my theme has covered all the necessary points and that it has demonstrated the importance of dealing with history and culture in our classes, using up-to-date methodological principles, something which can only be of benefit to our students.